Hey everybody, here we are again on 9.5 test. Now I was trying to get a video of the Conway. This is the best I'm going to be able to do for now. I'm very sorry about that. It's not a particularly exciting match, but I think it does show some of what the Conway is about. So, typical test server high tier match, it's pretty much half TDs and half normal stuff. Having so many TDs does make it very difficult to test things because there's just so much alpha on the field. But we have to make do with what we can get. And so we'll see how this goes. Now, being in a TD I don't really know how to play, and one that's fairly squishy at that, remembering this thing's turret is quite thinly armoured. If you just look at the way the weld joints are on this thing, you can tell that it's not very thick. This is of course built on the Centurion hull with a very big tall turret, an easy target in other words. It is a little bit less mobile than the Centurion. As you could probably imagine, that's the result of sticking a giant turret and a giant gun on a medium tank chassis. And you can see this thing's pretty poor on the move gun handling in action. Once you get it into a static position though, it's much better. And again, you can see the problems with gun depression that this line has, especially as it gets higher in tier. Now with the Challenger, it's not too bad because a 17 pounder isn't a very big gun, so to speak, but as soon as you get up to the L7A1 in the Charioteer and then the L1A1 in this, you have a giant breach moving around inside that turret, which takes up a lot of space. Now, surprisingly, I actually bounced a heat round there from the T62. I can't quite tell where it hit. I suspect it may have just come in at a very bad angle and bounced off the corner of the turret or something. Remembering, of course, that heat may actually bounce off this thing if it hits at a bad enough angle. However, this turret's not going to be bouncing much of anything else, and certainly won't be bouncing any decently aimed shots. So, as with the Waffenträgers, the key to the Conway is going to be to sit as far back as possible, or at least as far away from something that can spot you as possible, and do damage from a distance. Playing this aggressively is not likely to work. Enemy Batchat thinks he's being clever. He gets a shot through his turret for his troubles. Take a blind shot there, hoping to hit him. I think I actually did. But then I've got the front of the JPE to worry about. Two JPEs actually. Now I took a bad shot there that probably hit his upper plate, which of course it wouldn't pen. And here you'll be able to see my high ping to the test server being frustrating. I was trying to get a shot on this 50B as he came up. If this was NA, I would have had a much better chance of hitting, but because I have to cope with nearly half a second of lag on the test server, it's very difficult to hit moving targets. And you can see just how slow my reactions are because of the ping difference, as I took a shot at a tank that was already dead there. Now, there is unfortunately one thing that the Conway isn't going to be able to deal with, and that is the front of a hull down JPE. Even with gold ammo, it's difficult to consistently pen them. In that case, he gave me a decent flat on shot to his front plate, and I just got a bit of decent RNG. Then that guy manages to bounce a side shot because he was turning at the time. It's never fun engaging JPs from this kind of distance. If I was closer up, I would have a much better chance. But again, the Conway is so big and so difficult to miss. It's not something you want to be fighting up close with. In terms of how the actual match is going, although the numbers between the two teams are looking not quite even, but close to it, you can see my team's established an inverted gun line, a concave gun line on the enemy position. They're all up on this hill. So it looks pretty obvious to me that this is going to be our match. It's just a case of trying to do as much damage as I can before it's over, which is going to be difficult given my position. Now, although the Conway isn't as mobile as the Centurion, it's not exactly slow. It does still accelerate quite quickly for something so big. Just not quite as quickly as the Centurion, for obvious reasons. So we see the enemy 4005 there. Now, the 4005 is basically a Centurion hull with a giant paper armoured turret stuck on it. The turret armour is, I believe, something like 14mm all around. It doesn't even have a gun mantlet, and so any way you hit it, you're liable to pen it. Now, I haven't actually looked at the armour scheme for the Conway, but I'd imagine it's slightly better. The Conway certainly looks like it has a little bit of turret armour, but just not enough to actually be useful at tier 9. Probably not even against tier 7 or 8 tanks, I would imagine. Match is pretty much over. It's just the enemy arty left to go clean up. And so now I can move up. Unlike the Charioteer, which I quite enjoyed playing on test and was able to play moderately aggressively with, the Conway is something that you can't be really aggressive with at all, and I didn't find it particularly enjoyable to play. In situations where I was actually able to put out damage, it was because I was sitting at the back, basically chieing it up, sniping people, which, if I wanted to do that, there are much more fun tanks I could do it in. So, although it's a fairly decent tank destroyer in that it's, you know, decently mobile and it has a good gun, I don't think the Conway is going to be the kind of tank most people would keep. There's not really any reason to. If you like this gun, just buy a Conqueror, remembering that the Conway is a tier 9 tank destroyer. So if you buy a tier 9 Conqueror, you have the same gun in a smaller, well, not smaller, but a less barn-sized target with better armor, as laughable as that concept sounds, considering we're talking about the Conqueror here, and with about the same mobility, maybe a little bit worse. The Conqueror is just the same gun in a better package. So I think the Conway is going to be not hugely popular. The Charioteer, on the other hand, I could see people enjoying quite a lot. It's a fun, flexible tank destroyer to play. It has the speed you would associate with a Cromwell or a Comet. Well, I guess more the Comet than the Cromwell. It's a good mobile vehicle. It's still relatively small. It does have a big turret, but it's not nearly as tall as this thing. And it has a good flexible gun that you will not be able to get on any other tier 8. So the Charioteer, I think, will be popular. The Challenger, I'm going to hazard a guess, probably not. Even though I've since found out that yes, the Firefly stats are in fact placeholders. Even once the Firefly cops the nerf it's bound to, I still don't think the Challenger's enough of a standout to really warrant keeping it, especially considering it shares a tier with the E25 and the SU-122-44, which are both much more fun to play, and in the E25's case is much better at shitting out damage. So I think probably the main keepers from this line will be the Archer, for people who are actually into playing weird back-to-front tanks, the Charioteer, and the 4005. The rest are fairly forgettable. They're the kind of tanks you play through them and then sell them and never really think about them again. Probably when I get to them I will keep them just because I have serious problems and insist on keeping just about every tank I play, but I would imagine most people won't. There's really no reason to. Again, if you want to play something with this gun at this tier, you have the Conqueror, which is just an objectively better vehicle in every single regard. In fact, I'm pretty sure the Conqueror has better stats. I know it has better soft stats on this gun for on the move accuracy, but I think it also has better hard stats. But I would have to double check that, so don't quote me on it. And also something I just noticed mid-sentence there is wargaming account in a JPE shot somebody and turned blue, which is interesting. I'm not sure what the wargaming WF accounts are. I saw a couple of them on test. They never really said anything. So I don't know. Maybe it's maybe they're wargaming employees. Maybe it's some special promotional thing. Maybe there's a show on in Russia or something. I don't know. Some sort of game development show or something. I don't keep up very much with the gaming scene, as it were, so I wouldn't be able to tell you what time of the year GDC or E3 or anything is, because I honestly don't pay attention. So it might be some convention or event on. I honestly don't have a clue. But back to the actual topic. Yeah, I think this new line is going to be interesting. I did have one person compare it to the Waffenträger line. They said they were basically British Waffenträgers. I would disagree, for the simple fact that the Waffenträger line is like the inverse of this. They go from having big guns that do high alpha and fire fairly slowly to having guns that fire very, very quickly, i.e. the autoloader on the Waffenträger E100, whereas this line does the opposite. It comes from low alpha, high rate of fire guns and moves towards the Doom cannon at the end of it. It's back to front compared to the Waffenträger line. I suppose you could kind of compare the Archer and some of the mid-tier Waffenträgers, maybe compare it to the Toaster or something, but I would disagree. I think that they're their own unique line of tanks. They're not really that similar to the Waffenträgers. The only real similarity is that in most of them you want to hang back, but I mean that's true of a lot of TDs. That's true of the Hellcat, and I don't think anybody's ever called the Hellcat a Waffenträger clone, and I don't think anybody's really called the Waffenträgers Hellcat clones, although certainly the Roomba is pretty similar in role to the Hellcat, if not in mobility. So I think they are unique tanks in their own right. I think they are going to be worth playing once they come out, and I think that they will be pretty popular, albeit only at certain tiers, those being 5, 8, and 10. As I said, the others are basically forgettable. The Achilles is pretty much just an M10 with a 17 pounder. There's nothing really to make it unique or interesting. The Challenger is, I mean, you've seen me play it. It's nothing really special. It's not really that fun to play. It's kind of like if you play a shitty Cromwell. Actually, it's like if you played the Comet, except the Comet with no armor and with slightly better pen. That's pretty much it. I'd rather take the Comet in every single situation. As far as the Charioteer goes, it's actually a legitimately good vehicle. It's small enough to not be an easy target like these. It's mobile enough to shift around, and it has a big enough but quick enough reloading gun to to really influence a match. And again, it's a gun that can pen basically anything in the game. Plus you have Hesh rounds, which you will now be able to use against tier 6s, which is going to lead to all kinds of hilarity. Normally the lowest tier tank that would see that gun is a tier 7, and tier 7s tend to actually have just enough armor to sometimes not get blown up by Hesh. Sometimes. So, Charioteer is a winner. The Conway, as I've said, the Conqueror is better, just play the Conch. But the 4005 is, I would say, probably not as flexible as the 183, especially now that 183 is gaining survivability at the expense of mobility somewhat, but it's probably going to be more pleasant to play for people who are impatient and aggressive like me, just purely because it can actually move around a lot quicker. And I would like to correct one of my previous videos. The gun is actually faster firing and more accurate than the 183s. What happened was I clicked on the gun in the tech tree, and then thought maybe if I compared it to the gun by clicking the gun on the tech tree for the 183, it would come up with two separate windows. In fact, because it is the same gun, despite having separate stats on the two tanks, it came up with the same window, which led me to believe it has the same stats, which is wrong, and probably would have been annotated into the video unless I forgot to do it, in which case, my apologies. So it's not quite the same. It's a slightly better gun, slightly more mobile platform, but it's a tier 10 KV2. It's giant, it's impossible to miss, and it's not going to be able to bounce anything, purely because its turret is just paper. So it'll be worth playing, but I don't know how popular it will be. But the Charioteer, I think, is the real winner of the line, and the Archer's sort of like the fun gimmick comedy tank of the line. Those two are the two, I would say, if you absolutely must play and keep only two tanks from this line, the Archer and the Charioteer are it. The 4005, while not ostensibly a bad tank destroyer, is not really worth having if you already have a 183 or if you're already working towards a 183, and it's not really anything unique or special, considering that, you know, if you want to have a high tier Hess shooter, the 183 is probably a safer bet because it's more survivable and I guess to an extent more flexible. So that pretty much rounds up my assessment of the 9.5 British tank destroyer line. I think I've got a couple more test videos to follow, and then we will be back to your regularly scheduled programming. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I wish you the best of luck in the field, and I'll see you next time.